Most of the processes within the fashion supply chain can be performed virtually. And then I will focus on the generation of digital narratives, digital fashion taste within social media. And social media, it's an extremely important player and accelerator of all the phenomena that we are about to discuss today. So let's start from the beginning. And as anticipated, I would like to thank two visionary thinkers, two important sociologists. I don't know if you know them, but many phenomena that are discussed today have been kind of forecast by them. And of course, they provided us an important interpretative framework to better understand what's going on around us in general and what's happening also within the fashion system. So a tribute to Zygmunt Bauman. His most famous book is Liquid Modernity. He's been written in 2000, so more or less 20 years ago. He wrote a lot. He has been one of the most important sociologists of our time. And thanks to him, we will deep dive the concept of fluidity. Maybe you are not so used with Jeremy Rifkin, but it was another extremely visionary sociologist. And in the same year of Liquid Modernity, he wrote an important book that is called The Age of the Access. When I first read this book, I didn't understood very well what was going on, but now it's amazing to see how far this sociology was able to look at. So let's start from Bauman. Today we talk a lot about fluidity, and actually it looks to be the most inspiring keyword for interpreting contemporary social cultural trends and market dynamics, but this concept has been proposed for the first time by Zygmunt Bauman to refer to a progressive liquefaction of social institutions and social phenomena. So something that might sound complicated, but that we can perfectly understand today. Think about how flexible and fluid are social categories such as gender. So today we are used to talk about fluidity, especially for the phenomenon of gender fluidity, but all the social categories related to ethnicity, social class, age, today have become much more flexible and fluid. This idea of fluidity welcomes all those phenomena that can be considered as hybrid, mixing something different. A few years ago, I read in a WGSN report a very interesting expression that is label-less society. Today, we are not used anymore to strictly label phenomenon, such as the phenomenon of gender identity. And so our society little by little transformed into something label-less, in which we are more flexible and open-minded. And especially today, it's very common, the expression non-binary, to refer to something that cannot be precisely categorized into one concept and can stay in the middle. So again, gender identities, especially today, are very often defined as non-binary. What about Rifkin? This is something from his book, The Age of the Access. In 2000, he realized how concept ideas and images, not things anymore, are the real items of value in the new economy. So he realized how many economic processes were about to involve things that were not material anymore, but immaterial. And so the main idea of his book is that we are shifting to an economy in which we do not need to own things anymore, but just access them. Think about Netflix, iTunes, and all the platforms that we use on daily basis, we will be immediately convinced how this concept is true. I don't need to own tangible items anymore. They can be DVDs, they can be CDs. It's important just to access them. So he focused an important contemporary phenomenon that is the idea that it's not necessary anymore to own physically own things, but just having the opportunity to access them. Think also about what is called today the sharing economy. I don't need to own a car anymore because I can share it. I don't need to buy DVDs anymore because I can just watch Netflix. I don't need to buy clothes anymore because I can rent it. And we will see how this concept went further. So also the act of consuming has been transformed because we do not need to destroy, use something tangible anymore, but just use it. So we are transforming from consumers to being users. And so also the whole concept of production is not tangible anymore and is more and more focused on cultural production. This can also welcome a phenomenon that goes in the direction of inclusivity. And we will see how this concept applies very well today to luxury that will recently shift from something exclusive to something inclusive. Inclusivity is another buzzword of today. So that was something that these two visionary thinkers anticipated in 2000, but now let's focus on what's going on right now. So what happened 20 years later? What is happening right now is the physical and digital world collision. In one of the last writings of Bauman, the sociologist writes, there are two parallel realities, the physical one and the virtual one, but he didn't realize how his notion of fluidity applied so well also for these two words that are not parallel anymore, but they are colliding. And as you know, the pandemic played as an accelerator of many phenomena and really demonstrated how it is true, because every single human action today can be virtually mediated. So today I can buy online, I can study online. We are, it's something that we are experiencing right now, but I can also play online, I can socialize, I can exercise. Imagine how many things platforms such Zoom enable us to perform, keeping social distancing and not necessarily engaging in a physical interaction. So today, consumers, people, we are seamlessly living in physical and virtual worlds, and we in a very agile way shift from one to another. And so we are becoming indifferent whether our daily activities are physical or virtual. So, you know, I'm a tutor. Now, for me, there is no difference anymore if I am providing a class, giving a class on Zoom or in a physical reality. And especially young consumers, so I'm referring to Zeta generations, tend to not to distinguish anymore between in real life and digital experiences. So this is something, of course, that has been accelerated by the use of meeting platforms such as Zoom and all the others, but just social media is something that enable us to shift from the virtual to the digital. And here we have some data, because today on average people spend more or less 2.5 hours on social media, on Instagram, TikTok, and all the other platforms. But it's not just the old and the new social media that are around us, because we will see also the importance of gaming platforms. And so gaming has been also considered today as a new form of social media, but also new technologies have been more and more adopted in recent times. So here I have some data from Euromonitor. These data are from April 2020, so very recent. And so you see global consumers that have used augmented reality and virtual reality in the past years. And so it's not strange that young people have tried them a lot. But as you can see, boomers, people that are above 60s, have made a quite strong use of these platforms. For instance, I think about my mom, that she's in the 70s. She's used to play with virtual reality during her phone calls. So I see that this is something that is becoming more and more common. And so people are becoming more and more used about these digital collisions. So we can shift from online, offline, and we will see also a merging of that. And I see that something is going on, just simply observing how visual merchandising has been changing so fast in the last year. Today, MR, mixed reality, is a buzzword, and it can mean many things, but basically what we are talking about, so these hybrid, fluid, not so strict distinction between what is physical and what is virtual. And as you can see, this is a phenomenon that you can immediately detect just watching, but having a look to window displays in which you have physical items coupled with something purely digital and animated. So let's have a closer look to this phenomenon of digitalization in fashion. And let's see how the whole supply chain is becoming more and more virtual and digital. What's the supply chain? As you know, the supply chain is the system of operations and transformation that enable a product to be transformed from raw materials to an end product and to be distributed to end consumers. So today we are witnessing a huge adoption of 3D product design. So also in schools, it's ordinary that people design collections and other objects using 3D platforms and software such as Cloud 3D that enable to create synergies with the other steps of the projects. For instance, virtual sampling or fitting. Also, the domain of collection, merchandising, or range planning now can be supported supported by artificial intelligence that make the process more and more effective. If we move away for a while from product development, we see that virtual processes today are very frequent also in recruiting. I imagine that many of you had the opportunity to engage in job interviews that were enabled by technologies, by using simple means such as virtual interviews, but also chatbots. Technology can support these phenomena. Then the pandemic especially made us use to the phenomenon of digital catwalks. Sometimes we will see also the whole fashion show can become virtual, or simply the event that 1 year ago was performed in a physical space now is lived in a purely digital space. Also, showroom had to adapt to the new situation. The showroom is a meeting point between brands, manufacturers, designers, and their distributors, the stores, so buyers. And so many showrooms went virtual. And there were already purely digital showrooms, such as the Tommy Hilfiger, that was quite visionary. And if you think about multiple showrooms today, we cannot not mention Tutor that is leading in this area. Then there is the magic word of Cgi influencers, the virtual influencers. In the cover of the slide, you spot Lil Michela Souza, also known as Lil Michela, and maybe a less known influencer that is Bermuda. They are both virtual characters. Also the campaigns, the communication campaigns, so another operation within the supply chain can be totally performed in a digital environment, we will see. And also consumer behavior has turned into a process that can be totally lived in a virtual form. As virtual are becoming stores, and so today there are startups such as Obsess that provides brands the opportunity to create immersive shopping environment in virtual, of course, forms. And also the post-purchase dynamics. So let's think about customer care can be managed virtually. I'm sure that you had the experience of virtual assistances, avatars, and again, chatbots supporting you during your customer journeys and customer care. A few examples before I mention 3D product design. This is something ordinary today in our school, and I imagine also in other fashion schools. So students today, fashion designers, emerging fashion designers are common in develop their collections in a 3D environment, such as the one of Cloud 3D. And this is something offering huge opportunities for creatives and also to make more efficient the other processes that are subsequent to design, such as the part cutting and also the fitting that can be performed virtually. But I guess that the most interesting phenomenon right now is the one of the digital collections. What are the digital collections? Collections that do not exist in real life, are not tangible. And by using Rifkin, by quoting Rifkin, this collection can be accessed only at a digital level, virtual level. So you can have clothes that do not exist, are not physical, but are always digital. And this is the mission of the fabric, and probably is the most famous and maybe the pioneering purely digital fashion house. As you can see here, I took some images from the websites. Their mission is to offer consumers outfits that are always digital, never physical. And this is seen and lived as the very last frontier of sustainability. Because if one item is purely digital, this means that no water, no raw materials are exploded, no carbon emissions. So a lot of positive externalities that make the digital collection advantage as being something purely, particularly sustainable. So digital fashion have lots of positive synergies with the domain of sustainability. But also consumer behavior can become totally digital and can be performed just on a virtual environment. How does it work? The answer to this question is provided by DressX. You will see that is the first multi-brand virtual e-tailer. So if you want to visit the website, you will see that there is a catalog. You can pick the outfit that you like. And then what happens? You just have to send them an image of you, and in 2 days, in a couple of days, they will send you back a rendered image of you with the virtual clothes on that you can consume on social media and on other digital platforms. So that's to clarify how does it work. So, because sometimes even me, when I was not so familiar with the process, said, how can I wear something digital? And this is what I was probably anticipating before. We are moving from consuming to using, and also the act of consumption is substituted by the act of rendering. So wearing is substituted by rendering, as we will see later. But the market of digital fashion is not necessarily just business to consumer, B2C, but also business to business. Something interesting that you can spot here is that these rendering can be offered only also for influencer campaigns and marketing campaigns by making something that is more sustainable, but also less expensive in terms of resources. Because again, how does it work? You can send, in this case, DressX, the provider, the photos of the collection, the image of the influencers, the ambassadors, and then again, the provider will send you the photo shoot that actually never occurred in real life. And so see the advantages in terms of costs, but also in terms of logistic, no transportation, no gas emission. And this is something that has been strongly supported by the fabricant as well. As you can see here in the caption, they explain how they engage into an influencer campaign with influencers that they never met in real life. And as you can see here, as you can read, the outfits do not need to be shipped. They just need to be rendered. And then try to see how inclusive can also be these purely digital products. The Fabricant, but also other brands, stress how digital outfits have no sizes and that can be perfectly fitting whatever body shape. This is the other example that you probably saw before, the collaboration with Puma. They say no airplane was boarded for the shoe, no fragile environment was compromised in the name of the marketing plan, no catering truck was needed for the team, no factory samples had to be delivered. In a digital creative world, you use no natural resources, and the need to manage physical interaction is an absolute no topic. So this is not only fascinating, but actually is something that can be reduce the cost in terms of money, of course, but especially in terms of sustainability. Something that I mentioned before is immersive shopping. When you think about e-commerce, probably you will think about the flat 2D environments, but things are changing, especially thanks to startups such as Obsessed, that is the main provider for these services. As you are seeing here, e-commerce is progressively transforming into something three-dimensional, in which you can experience a near experience to a real store, with the possibility to include multimedia experiences, so you can customize your journey and you can deep dive into brand contents, so that you can really live an immersive experience in the world of the brand. Cgi Influencers. A few days ago, I spot this amazing directory, Virtual Humans. As you can see here, there are almost all virtual influencers, and you can see how different they can be. Sometimes they are extremely realistic, other times they are cartoon-like, sometimes they are totally fantasy characters. Sometimes they are surreal, they can also be creepy. Sometimes, I don't know, to be the influencer, then you will see there is also a toddler virtual influencer that creeps me out, I have to say. Sometimes they have a purely glamorous aesthetic. Sometimes they can target children directly, such as Ilona and Ryan. Sometimes they can have a horror aesthetics. So there are many imaginaries, many again body shapes, nationalities, and also aesthetics, cartoon-like, realistic, surreal, as John the Pork, as you can see here. So this is something extremely fascinating that in a while, here is the boy that creeps me out, baby Alice. Try to spot the Instagram profile, is kind of creepy. Now we will try to better understand how this word works. Sometimes we have toys, we saw Barbie, we saw Kada. Sometimes we have creatures that defines themselves as robots. Sometimes they define themselves as post-human, and you can read something interesting in their profiles, because sometimes very openly they say that they live in the third platform or in the multiverse or metaverse. So they say that they live in many places at the same time, and they are stuck in multiple devices, including the one that you are using to follow them. So now I guess it's interesting to go deeper into the topic of digital fashion and CGI influencers, and try to better understand which kind of narratives can be generated in this virtual or hybrid environment. To this end, I will draw to my sociosemiotic background, and I will draw from a classic theory that is very dear to me, that is the possible words theory. That is very effective when you want to investigate narrations, tales. This theory was drafted by Umberto Eco in the 79, then it was revised by Ugo Volli, another Italian semiologist. In 2013, I made my very first effort to apply that to an industry, and especially to the fashion industry. And then later, in my trend research activities, I tried to transform this theory into a model, a matrix, actually, that can clarify you which kind of narrations can be generated. So it's a very effective tool to understand narratives, but also aesthetics. I've been applied this tool within many areas, for beauty products to children's wear to fashion design collection, and now I will share this with you regarding the digital world. So what is a possible word? It's simply an narrative imaginary. So the place where a narration can exist, and this is a word made of specific values, specific settings, characters, and pattern of action. To make it simple, as I anticipated before, we can classify possible words very easily by using these matrix. And the matrix will be compared two dimensions that are the creative inspiration and the aesthetics, the execution. Strictly speaking, this can be the design direction, but the aesthetics is fine. So how to create this map? Let's start from the inspirations. Inspirations can be real, so something that is inspired by our word, or unreal, so something that is inspired by fantasy, dream, or imagination. So this will be the first axis of our map. The second one, the aesthetic, the rhetoric, can be simply divided into something conventional, logic, coherent, that totally respect, if you want, the laws of physics, or something unconventional that break the rules and might result into something illogical or even contradictory. So these four axes can originate four possible words, as they were classified in 2000 by Ugo Bolli, and I renamed these possible words into something closer to our topics, as specifically down to earth, so real and conventional, imagination driven, that are conventional but inspired by word, dream, and imagination. And then we have something conceptual, inspired by reality, but with an unconventional design direction or aesthetic. And then something that will bring you to the next level, that is surreal, something inspired by our subconscious, our fantasy, our dream, and in which you can see paradoxes and contradictions. So let's see one of them. And we will start with the so-called plausible words, and with the down-to-earth narratives. And here in the background, you can see one of my favorite CGI influencer, that is Ria. She's created by WW Tokyo, that is an agency for virtual characters that I will introduce you later. So which are the characteristics of this imaginary? The hyper-real aesthetics. If you are not so familiar with Ria and these CGI influencers, sometimes you can exchange them for a real mode, but they are not. Another typical phenomenon here in down-to-earth narratives, we can see digital and physical replicas, so something that mimic our reality. And also the phenomenon of digital twins, so the fact that we can elaborate an alternative identity in just a virtual space. Here we experience the phenomenon that I was mentioning before, from wearing the act of wearing something to just access something that is rendered on our figure or in our other avatar. Here we will see a strong use of mixed reality to simulate in real life experiences. And we will see how this mimicry of real life can lead to the creation of alternative social landscapes, where there is lots of room for inclusivity, for sustainability, and also for responsibility. A few cases. Let's start with the dress sex. And so in dress sex, you can find different kind of aesthetics and imaginary. But here, the main point is, can you spot the difference between these outfits? Some of them are not real, they're purely digital. They can be digital replicas, or they can be something that was just designed. And here again, the mission of sustainability. So the fashion industry is something that pollutes and exploits resources and crowds landfills, while the digital items do not require water, unless the water that is required by our designers. And as you can see, there can be, again, an economic advantage for the consumer, because you can access the garment for half or even less of its original cost. For instance, Pascal clothes. Actually, to be honest, I didn't know these brands, but I love it. I love the aesthetic. Pascal clothes are available in real life. For instance, this rainbow dress is available for approximately $800. At their sex, you can buy the digital replica for just $60. Okay, so sometimes the collections exist in real life, and so they have a digital twin in virtual platforms. This is what is happening with Gucci right now. A couple of days ago, I read on Business of Fashion how Gucci was launching its first virtual sneaker. But before this, if you download the Gucci app, you will see how many digital down-to-earth experiences are possible. Also, simply by the use of the virtual try-ons. That was something that I've been playing yesterday. This is me wearing trying actually purely digital versions of Gucci watches or sneakers. I don't know how my feet look so weird, but you know, it's something that you can experience in a mixed reality world. But as I was saying before, something extremely interesting is this Gucci Virtual 25. That is a model of sneaker that is only digitally available. There is no in real life replica, so it was something that was intentionally developed to exist just in virtual worlds. And this is a typical market development or even diversification strategy, because openly the brand is trying to target consumers, young consumers that are tech savvy, but they can also be price sensitive for the first time. And so you see how luxury becomes inclusive. So you can you can try the real Gucci shoes, but you have to spend hundreds of dollars to buy them. But if you want the virtual shoe that is exclusive and that you can wear in digital environments, you can have it for just $12. And that's a deal, actually. Let's explore other possible words, some down-to-earth narratives. You probably knew that JCDS, the Italian brand, last September performed a digital event that was played just by virtual avatars. And you see again the inclusivity that we are witnessing right now in magazines, in real photo shooting, but especially in digital environment, there is really room for whatever body shapes and also defeats. Another example you can read about on WGSN is the Gillette campaign that includes models, avatars with cellulite and dyschromias and promoting a more authentic and inclusive vision of beauty. Let's go back to my favorite characters, the CGI influencers. I introduced before, Ria. And as you can see, she's hyper real in the aesthetics. There are shooting of her in which you cannot really spot that she's not an existing person. And I would like you to introduce a friend of her that is Imagram. She's also created by WW Tokyo agency. And for instance, in this video, she introduces herself within a collaboration with IKEA. So she's extremely realistic and glamorous. She has a dog, Candy Cottonstein, that is another virtual influencer. And she has a precise networks because she's a friend with Ria, she's friend with Ella Imagination. She has a brother that is Plastic Boy, and sometimes she's very good in explaining also the drama around their network. So she introduces herself as someone real that can merge with in real experiences. So she's opening a framework towards our real life, and you can spot a very accurate and detailed lifestyle. Here you can see her hanging out with this alternative social, within this alternative social landscape. She's with Ria. Here there is his brother, Plastic Boy. Here you can see the drama because she has not been talking with her brother for maybe 2 months. She said, it's been a whole month since my fight with my brother. So it's so realistic, also the interaction. And here you can see her in mixing with real life in Cambodia. And here she's spreading a message of responsibility, of valuing the work of people. That is something that is very common on virtual avatars, on virtual characters. So the sense of responsibility. For instance, later I will introduce you with Nunuri, that is another CGI character, and she defines herself as the voice of the voiceless. So a privileged character with lots of visibility that can spread messages towards commitment. But then I will bring you to because Ima is not just a virtual influencer, she's also a virtual designer, because very recently she developed her own collection that was sold on Amazon. And so here you can see the commercial to present the collection. Something that I didn't told you about possible words is that they are permeable. That is, characters can move from one possible word to another. So we are used to see Imma in a plausible, down-to-earth narratives, but sometimes, as you can see here, there is room for moving to other possible words. So it's nice because Ima has a digital twin that is cartoon-like, and you will see here that she's have kind of superpowers as well. So this is leading us to the next possible word that are the imagination-driven narratives. Here, I put a very micro influencers because she has not so many followers, but I like her. Look at her Instagram profile. This is Amaretta Doll. And actually, these imagination-driven narratives can involve a very cartoon-like or a doll aesthetics. So not something hyper-real, but something driven by imagination, dream, fantasy. And so here there is a clear intention to bring us and escape into an imaginary world to create branded playgrounds. So here there is lots of rooms for design brands and collaborations. And here we will see lots of synergy with the gaming industry, with the I think now very well-known phenomenon of the designer skins, the clothes that you can enable your characters in gaming platforms to wear. And so the skins can be designed by can be branded and involve more and more brands, as I will show you. So mixed reality here become an escapist bridge to a real world, because you will see very often these characters, fantasy characters, interact with real world characters in a very ironic way, if you want. The synergies with gaming will make fashion design blending with costume design, costume characters. And so we'll see how the skins, the designer skins are developed not by the style departments of brands, but by costume creators. A few examples. Let's start again with the Cgi Influencers. A nice example is Ella, Imagination. She's another friend of Imma, but she has magic powers. And she collaborates with Disney, so there are many, many Disney and fantasy contents on her profile. Here, the phenomenon of the skins, you are probably aware how many are right now the collaborations with designer brands and gaming, especially on Animal Crossing. So here I put the recent collaboration for Gucci, of Gucci with Animal Crossing, but there are so many others. Sometimes it's Animal Crossing, sometimes it's The Sim. A few years ago, it was Louis Vuitton with the Legends of Leagues. So this is something very, very common. And again, sometimes there are bridges from one possible word to another, because as you can see, Imagram that can bring you into the fashion, the fantasy world of gaming, and she can, and she has her own version, fantasy version in Animal Crossing, with the cartoon-like and super deformed aesthetics that is typical of imagination-driven aesthetic and narratives. Nunuri, is another huge character. She's very, very popular right now, so you probably already know her. She defines herself with the triple C: couture, curious, and cute. She made lots of collaboration with designer brands, and she's actually a student of Istituto Marangoni. I had the pleasure to meet her creator, Jörg Zuberg, last year. We invited her for a webinar with my students. They are both great character. And she's the one that also finds herself as the voice of the voiceless, because she has a very glamorous attire, but she's very committed to humanitarian causes. As you can see here, she can interact with in real life. So sometimes she's aligned with some real characters, such as Karen Broadfield that you see here. And she's proud to be a doll. She wants to be a doll. She wants to be purely virtual. She can just admit mixed reality experience, something in virtual reality. And she's aware to be a doll. So for instance, her creator explained as how she's smaller than real people, she needs to be helped, and so lots of interesting stories. Here you can see her in the entrance of our design campus in Milan with Zanatta, Massimo Zanatta, that is the campus director. So here there is an escapist use of mixed reality to provide this illusion, playful illusion. But you can see also something more sophisticated as this recent collaboration with Zegna, where she interacts in a very natural way with a real model in a very natural landscape. And these images have been posted just a couple of weeks ago, I guess. So these are really, really recent. And then there is something nice I would like to share with you, that is also the possibility to have a real conversation on Zoom. For instance, that was a lecture she had at Harvard University. And as you can see her, she was able to very, again, a natural way to interact with students. And here we see Jorg, that is a creator. Let's go to something less ordinary, the conceptual narratives of impossible words. Here we can have different kind of aesthetics, sometimes non-gestaltian aesthetics. What does it mean? If you are familiar with psychology or also design, you probably heard about the principles of good design that are responding to the rules of human perceptions. That are those rules that guide designers towards simplicity, symmetry, clarity, continuity. So a design that can be easily perceived by our human brain, and that human brain that tend to like. So the good design or the ordinary design normally is very in line with this kind of rules. Conceptual design, think about designers such as Margiela, brands like Margiela or Comme des Garçons, or even Sakai or Tom Brownie. You will realize that the design is unconventional in most cases because these rules are broken, with something that is exaggerated, so proportions that might look hyperbolical or paradoxical, with an aesthetic that can be dissected, deconstructed, and reconstructed, or with a an exploration of unusual materials. So I will show you how even in virtual environment, these elements that we can find in experimental design can be replicated in a more virtuous way in virtual worlds. Virtual worlds also offer us the opportunity to experiment with new shapes and especially new materials that would be impossible to use in real life, we will see. And this would lead very often to a futuristic aesthetic, a predilection of impossible worlds, even in narratives in general, is the adoption of technology, the adoption of something futuristic. So very often the result that we obtain is something that can be defined as cyberpunk, something that blends technology with nature, or more recently, something that mimic nature in a so-called bionic way. The designers and the creators that originates these conceptual narratives propose digital identities, so the identity that we can perform in virtual environment, as the next level of existence, meaning in virtual realities you can dare to be something that you would never dare to be, and doing things that would be impossible in a physical world. So let's see a few examples. This is a brand that you can buy at DressX. As you can see, this is a typical example of non-Gestaltian Gestaltian aesthetics. So something conceptual where you can see exploration of shades, materials, but especially the use of deconstructed aesthetics. So something that is deconstructed and reconstructed in a unusual way. This aesthetic is visible on another CGI character that is Ruby. She's very often distinguished by a cyberpunk attire. So in many cases, she might be looking like a robot. So here you can see cyberpunk aesthetics, so mixing natural and technological. You can see something bionic because, for instance, in this image at the center, you can see grass growing on skin. And then above, you can see experimental hyperbolical design. For instance, this purple and black outfit reminds me something I saw at Comme des Garçons, so a conceptual design. As I said, in impossible worlds, you can experiment with impossible materials. So in a very recent collaboration between Buffalo and the fabricant, users have been given the opportunities to wear fire shoes, so shoes that are inflamed, something that would be actually impossible in real life. Or again, this is again the fabricant garments that kind of breathe, that you can see, that have movements. Other times you might have impossible materials such as glasses or bubbles. So these plastic, very, very subtle textures that you can have in bubbles. And if we want to make a last step and really go into next level, we will end up in surreal narratives. So we will see something totally in common with the surreal movement, where you can witness the so-called phenomenon of post-human. So here there is a manipulation of the human figure that can blend and transform into something else than human. Here, the inspiration are not real. We do not play much with game, fantasies, imagination, but mostly with visions, oniric visions of trick, from our subconscious. The landscapes in which you can see these narrations sometimes are post-human or apocalyptic or dystopian. And a common trait of surrealism, and in these considerable words, is the polysemic aesthetics. You can have things that can mean at the same time multiple things. And then I will show you a few examples. And similarly to the surreal rhetorics, this kind of possible word can be recognized by misplacements. So things that are in the wrong place, such as in this case of the pillow that is placed on the head of the subject. So typical parts of the bodies that do not match with the real part in which they are supposed to be. And so here we have unexpected shapes, cuts, and proportions. So the conceptual level, the non-gestaltian aesthetic is really led to the next level. Here are a few examples. As you can see here, fashion designs blends with art, basically. So we can have very surreal characters with multiple arms, or, you know, this headpiece that it's not clear what it is, if it's a representation, creepy representation of the brain of these cyborg, or it's something else. Here we have, this is very recent, this is Teresa Manzo that very recently won a competition promoted by the fabricant. As you can see, there are misplacements and a polysemic aesthetics, because I can have lashes, but that at the same time are petals, and as you can see, the head is mixed up with something unhuman and technological, as the skin that includes something metallic. Or we can have the act not simply of rendering something, not simply wearing, virtually wearing something, but in a bionic view, something that can directly grow and bloom from the skin of the wearer. Or again, the unconventional materials are really brought to the next level. So we see something that grows directly from the body of the wearer in the form of, I don't know, this is smoke, colors, oil, something that you cannot really define. So to sum up, these words are very fascinating, but not all of them work in the same way. Normally, this is true not simply for the possible words of digital fashion, digital narratives, but in general. Normally, the conventional aesthetics of down-to-earth and imagination-driven can lead to the creation of something that can be commercial and mainstream, so that it can click with the main taste of the market, while the non-gestaltian aesthetics of conceptual and surreal tends to be directional, fashion forward, and so something that is not commercial at all and niche, as I told you before, especially in the surreal environment. Fashion blends with art, with something that go beyond the commercial logic. So all the aesthetics are fascinating, but a warning. The down-to-earth and imagination-driven imaginaries are perfect for common consumers, so fashion followers, in the famous Rogers model of trend forecasting, the so-called early elite majority segments. Okay, so the 70% of the market normally can be attracted by these aesthetics, while the conceptual and surreal aesthetics can basically click with fashion leaders, innovators, and early adopters that are a very small percentage of the market normally. So, oh my God, what happened? I was concluding. I don't know why my screen is not shared anymore. I'm sorry about that. So,
Simona, we are seeing your screen.
okay, yeah. I put it again. So I'm over. So remember that the market potential of this narration is much higher because it's able to click with the common case taste of most of the market. These maybe more fascinating aesthetics can be harder to be promoted, normally attract fashion leaders, and so here the market potential is lower. But the good news is that in virtual environments, consumers, users tend to be more open-minded, so the percentages that we can see in real worlds not necessarily would be the same in virtual worlds. So people tend to dare more in virtual spaces. So the market potential continues to be lower than the conventional aesthetics, but higher that in real worlds. So that's it. Okay, I had the very last slide for you. I forgot about that. So if you have any questions, any question, comment is welcome. Just checking the chat, but I see something in a language that I cannot understand. So I don't know if you want to simply talk or if you want to write your question in the chat, and then I will be happy to answer.
I can translate. Simona, thank you very much. Honestly, you blew my mind with all these new concepts. For me, the CGI influencers and the examples that you shared were, for me, totally new. So I thank you very much. It was really interesting. And thank you for the how it works slide. That it was going to be my first question. So,
okay.
So thank you for that. Bueno, si alguien tiene alguna pregunta que quiera hacerla, puede hacer en español y yo le hago la traducción a Simona. Buenos días, Sonia. Buenos días, Victoria. Gracias a ustedes por estar acá. ¿Alguna pregunta, alguna duda? ¿Algún comentario? ¿Alguien que quiera comentar sobre la presentación de Simona?
Kind of shine.
Very inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
Ana.
Oh, thank you so much. That's the best comment I can receive. Amazing how there is a lot of things that we do not know about yet. Yeah, that was my impression as well. I've been knowing about virtual fashion for 2-3 years right now, because I've been started following the fabricants since the beginning, and then I started learning, and this is amazing. What is being doing right now. So we are really witnessing a transformation of the whole social media landscapes. But get ready, because new social media for virtual consumption are about to grow, and also the Gucci virtual sneaker that I showed you before will be held on these new platforms. So follow, because it's really interesting.
Elisa has an interesting...
something that I can't understand from Javiera, los influencers virtuales, what does it mean?
Javier is asking if you think that influential influencers, virtual influencers, will supply the real ones.
Okay, so this is something that is already in the debate. In fact, someone start writing in commentaries in news the risk of CGI characters and virtual models to replace real model. I don't think that the virtual world will totally replace our reality. So real models should not be scared of losing their job, or real influencers should not be scared to be replaced by virtual human. They will just align with us. So there will be an alternative, something coexisting together with real life influencers and models. So I cannot dare forecast, very dystopian forecast, that everything will become virtual. The virtual world will align together with the physical world.
Simona, a short question. What does CGI stands for?
Computer generated imaginary.
Thank you. Well, see, Elisa has an interesting question about what careers do you think would be more useful for the future, to learn for the future?
In this domain, there are really many careers because, as you can see, the whole supply chain, so the whole fashion system is opening to virtual. So there are opportunities in the domain of design, fashion design, but also interior design, because now there is, for instance, lots of interest in creating virtual backgrounds for conferences. So this is another area that is quite interesting. So virtual design, also communication design. So the whole creation of characters is something that can be done not necessarily by a fashion designer, but also by a communication designer. Then there are opportunities in the domain of communication, of course, so digital PR, social media. There are opportunities at the level of buying, with the phenomenon of digital showrooms. There are lots of opportunities in retails, because now the leader in selling virtual clothing is DressX, but there will be others. So prepare for these new market opportunities, and also the domain of immersive shopping. So if you think about the domain, you can be engaged at the creative level as a designer, as also stylist, work in this domain of creating this fictional taste, virtual taste, but also in the department of business. There are many opportunities linked to the digitalization of many processes. Okay, so I don't know if I were able to answer all the curiosities. Okay, careers, how everything going together? Ah, you study Bauman. Yeah. Every time that I read Bauman, I say, oh my God, he was so right. And there were things that I couldn't realize. If you have the opportunity, also read Rifkin. It's really illuminating.
Can you, Simona, can you put in the chat the name of the two books that you recommended at the beginning, please?
It's Rifkin, The Age of the Access, and Bauman, Z. The first one is Liquid Modernity, but I suggest you Consuming Life. It's less heavy, we can say, and he anticipates interesting things regarding social media, because I read these when Facebook was developing, as I Yeah, he's so forward, and he has been writing for for very long in his life. If I think about his age, he was in his 80s and late 80s. In his last publication, he was really brilliant. Let me see if there is something else. Okay.
Victoria is asking a question. What do you think would happen if a brand wanted to launch a digital catalog or product, and then the product it's not the same or has poor quality as the one that offered in the social media? For example, it happens usually that someone buys something from Amazon and the product is nothing like the pictures.
But do you mean in the digital domain, that is, I see um, an option of rendering, and then the image come back to me that is not looking so good? I don't think so that there will be this risk, also because the advance of technology is so fast. I'm pretty sure that in years, just a few years, we will not really be able to spot the difference between something digital and virtual, because you saw also my picture of augmented reality. Now the technology is not that perfect. If you try the virtual background in Zoom, you will realize that again, it looks nice, but it's not that perfect, because when you move, the image can be disappearing or creating weird effects. But considering how fast is technology, I'm pretty sure that this is something that will be sold very, very soon. And garments will be more and more interacting, because I had the impression that right now everything is possible, because digital fashion is static on the human person, and the dynamism is created through the movement of the garment that is rendered. But I think that the next step will be to enable animated versions and posts with virtual garments, and I'm confident with the progress of the technology. But I don't know if I answer. Yes, thank you.
¿Alguna otra pregunta? Nos quedan unos pocos minutos más. Simona, I was curious about one of the slides you mentioned. There was subconscious suggestions. What can be, or which are these subconscious suggestions?
This is something that comes from surrealism, as in surreal art. The aesthetic that is created can be tricky. For instance, you saw the image. I can share it again. Also, this is surreal, because this is something that has something sinister, because in real life this person probably would not be breathing or not seeing, and so this is something that we can experience in a nightmare or in a dream, in an altered state of mind, like in this one. Just 1 second. This one, I can put it bigger. This misplacement is something that occur in dream and bad dream sometimes. You probably experience in a weird dream to have misplaced part of the body, or things that were not in the right place. This is a typical trick of our subconscious. So it's a kind of joke that our mind can create, and that surreal artists tend to replicate in their work. They can be typical artists, but also digital artists. So there is lots of room and lots of interest right now for these. So that's the reason why sometimes the aesthetic is sinister, because it looks something that is not, as Animal Crossing or Nunuri, something cute. euphoric, as we say in semiotics, but dysphoric, something that can also disturb us.
Mm-hmm. And well, thank you very much. And we have two more questions. Tanya is asking that, well, you presented these visionary thinkers. And how do you think, or how would you predict the 20 years, like in the future?
So if I have to make a forecast, yeah, I will see ourselves valuing more real life nature, so really appreciating nature, because we cannot we will probably won't forget about the lockdown and everything that we were deprived by during this year. But I will see our life aligning with all the opportunities of virtual realities, augmented realities, robotics, and artificial intelligence. I just made a little mention of artificial intelligence, but this will be very, very important in the future. And not that many works will be replaced by artificial intelligence, but this is something that is about to happen. Before I mentioned customer service, sometimes you just talk with the machine and it looks like you're talking with a human being. So this will be accelerated. So the phenomena that are just emerging right now will become commonplace, but I guess they will never substitute what's going on in real life.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. How many questions?
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's really, really be a pleasure to spend this afternoon with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Simona. I think we will be closing up the talk for now. Gracias a todos los que estuvieron. Después pueden contactarse conmigo si quieren. Algunas personas llegaron tarde, quedó grabado el seminario, así que vamos a poder enviárselos. Así que, bueno, gracias Adri, Daniela, gracias a todos.